Primetime Saturday with a...
I'm sorry, Andrew Weissman, but if I recall correctly, in 2018, you were one of the people who helped write the Mueller report, and you all botched the hell out of that.
And never in my wildest dreams would I have thought we would be here. I thought we were better as a country.
Oh, yeah.
Like all these sites that have been around for creating videos and all that, like text stock videos, they're done.
But that's why Canva was one of the first to get into doing AI.
What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations. 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads and fathers. It's sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. And being part of that team, we have reached out directly and indirectly to over 400,000 dads, fathers, and male caregivers around the world. And as always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. We're broadcasting on November 2nd, but I'm never the star. I don't want to be the star because Prince said he said to these ladies, baby, you're the stars. What is up?
Oh, man, we're down to the final countdown. What is it? The final countdown.
Who sung that final? This is the final. Who sung that song?
I don't know. I don't remember who did that one.
Okay, well, I'm gonna look that up while you ladies are settling in. What's been going on? What up? What up?
Oh, Aisha, you're muted.
Oh gosh.
Sorry, nothing. I'm just ready for this to I think I'm ready for it to come to a conclusion here.
Okay.
Yeah. We talked about that on Girlfriends Chat this weekend.
We did.
Pretty exhausted.
Okay.
Yeah, we did. I think that we just I think that it's time. We're ready. I think because there's another part to this, right? So there's the part that happens and starts November 6th. So if although and we should also plug that we're doing an election night results returns.
Why are you stealing all my thunder?
I'm saying that even after
people are gonna click off now after like 2 minutes and 52 seconds.
So we don't know how long that show's gonna. So we don't even know how long that show's gonna go, right? It's gonna go till we get tired enough. Right? But
okay.
We still might not get those results then. So November 6th is when the real things. You know, I have Prince fans who we connect on Twitter, and one of them was saying to me that they're kind of afraid for our country because, on one hand, if he wins, they're afraid for us. And if he loses, they're afraid for us because he said he's overseas. He said he's never seen the U.S. this close to being on the brink of a civil war. Yes. And the real concern at this point isn't the election now. It moves to after November 5th, we move to
time because you'll take away 3 of our conversation topics in 1 minute. So let's stop. Let's get to this. All right. Primetime Saturday with Aisha LaLa at Patreon, aka Girlfriends Chat. I'm gonna change that. Girlfriends Chat. That's proper to change that. Then the store, there's the link. And on most platforms you're watching this, it'll be in the comments. Also, join the Discord group. I think that's going to be a very interesting Discord group this week. It always is. Subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Also, like the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. To advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms I'm a part of, please email me dr.vibe at the vibe.com. And also, we never forget that lady named Dr. Tachi from Fort Lauderdale, who runs and powers Indie Soup Media that has over 40 independent content creators and has now over 20,000 YouTube subscribers in about 7 or 8 months. And we are happy to be part of that platform. And people are already in. Number 1 fan, Jen Myers. Hello. Ramsey Unleashed, all the way. It's been a while. Is it from Scotland? Is with us. As how am I keeping? Sir, I am keeping Blackalicious. And the singer of the final countdown was a group called Europe. So,
I would have missed that one.
yeah,
I missed one.
Jen Meyer says Europe sang it also, and that sung it. Okay. And says, guess she is not a she. None of these ladies are. So get ready, get ready. And in the house also, Regina is in the house. All right. Might as well just put up the banner and let you ladies just fly. All right. Well, you know what? I'll put that up later. Let's talk about it first. The amping up of violent rhetoric in the final days of the U.S. presidential election.
So I can continue with what I say.
Yes, go ahead. Now you can get your. Go ahead.
So Ms. Friend was saying that they're worried for us if he wins because of the descent into fascism and autocracy, and then if he loses because this violence. We're already seeing the violence with people burning mailboxes, U.S. Postal. Just so you know, that's a federal crime. But burning the U.S. Postal Service boxes because people are putting their mail-in ballots in them. November 6th is the date we need to worry because Trump, I promise you, by 10 p.m. on the 5th, he's going to do like he did the last time, hold a press conference and come out and say he won and to stop the count. And here's the thing. I'm hoping that, and because she's pretty much run a flawless campaign, I almost expected that when the polls close, the first polls close, Kamala will make comments about we have to make sure that every vote is counted. And we might not get a result tonight because there are this. And, people should understand the reason that a lot of those votes aren't going to count. It has nothing to do with Democrats. Republicans are really snowing people into not seeing the fact that they passed these laws in these states, specifically these red states, that don't allow for counting of early vote until after the polls close that night.
Right.
And that's the problem. Like my state, for example, when you get your 8 o'clock result from Connecticut, that's your 8 o'clock result from Connecticut. You know how we know? Because when I early voted, I asked the lady and she told me, no, we start counting early vote, day of voting at 6 a.m. We start the early count at 6 a.m. And I was like, oh, okay. So they start early. So you have a lot of these states that put into their state legislation, because remember, people forget, even though this is a federal election, elections, how they're run, are run out of the states. Kind of like those, remember how they want to send abortion to the states, and so all these states have their abortion on the ballot. Well, guess what? States run the elections, and so the federal election law, we have a general federal election law, but every state has their own set of election laws. And one of those things that they get to determine for themselves is if they allow for early vote, and if they do, when they will count those ballots. So, November 6th is when he's going to start his nonsense. Steve Bannon is already, I find it funny that Steve Bannon got out of jail this week, right?
No, who you telling?
Because he's already starting that BS that he did the last time. Remember, he was one of the people who helped plan and rally people to the ellipse January 6th. So there's that. And then of course there were his comments about Liz Cheney and putting four whatever rifles in her face. It's like, this is bogus. This is nonsense. We are better than this. Or are we? I mean, that's the other question you have to ask. Are we better? Are we better than this? When a lot of the country hears that and doesn't have a problem with it.
I'm just, how do you top that? Because everything is absolutely ridiculous. And the fact that they've already told us a long time ago, I mean, over a year ago, he's already started with the rhetoric of he's not going to accept anything other than a win. So he has got his people all lined up for that. And the fact that the disrespect for our elections started early, and he's got these groupies that don't care about process or understand process is going to unfold, and we're going to see it. And my words to Aisha and girlfriends chat, and y'all need to go and hear that, is I'm concerned as well for our country, because I'm not concerned so much. I know it's going to be very close. I'm not concerned so much about Kamala pulling it out. What I'm concerned about is the aftermath. And that is what's frightening to me, because if y'all thought that January 6th was terrible, we're going to see other things. Now, the only thing that someone said this week, and I said, I didn't think about it this way, is he came on and he said, you know what? Y'all think y'all think that y'all done something on January 6th. You caught them off guard is what you did. But now they know what to expect from you. So you better be rethinking what your plans are if you're planning on doing something stupid. But we're seeing it in everyday news now, more and more rhetoric, like that parade that was done, that they had a Trump, it was a Trump, it was a float, and they had Trump on the float, and they had Kamala in chains behind it. And families were horrified. And I do believe some people who were Trump supporters even said themselves, this has gone too far. This is just way too much.
And they called it Halloween, a Halloween thing. And not to interrupt you, Laura, but the fact of the matter is Halloween is,
they haven't doubled, they've tripled.
We have a Lala and I talked about Halloween, right? When we talked about it, it's not one of my favorite holidays, it's one of hers. And but one of the things that never sits well with me, because people make an excuse of showing their racism on Halloween. So there were also pictures of children dressed as January 6th rioters with AR-15s, like these 11, 12-year-olds. I saw a picture of he couldn't have been more than 7, dressed as Trump with another child in blackface chained to him as Barack Obama, and a little girl dressed as Hillary chained behind him. And then they called it Halloween fun. You know what? I told my daughter about this last night because I was concerned, because she was going to a party on campus, and I was like, as Black women, be careful where you guys go, right?
Oh my God, yes.
Because yes, it's Halloween, but it's also right before this election, and I don't trust, honestly, right now. I fear for you being around, a big group of white boys, and I said, because you're probably thinking your generation a little bit more open-minded, but remember that those guys your age and your generation were raised by people from my generation, and they were raised by people from my mother's generation.
Yes.
Okay, so this is how racism gets passed down, because we saw it in those pictures, and like you said, those things, they had children there, Lala.
Yes. And that's what one of the people were talking about. I don't want my kids to see this. We packed up and we left, is what we did. And you can't even go and have good old-fashioned fun of just going to a parade or going to just a grocery store now. Because also another thing that was very popularized this week on content is that there was a Trump supporter that went to the polls with his Trump gear on. You're not allowed to do that. I can't go to the polls with Harris gear on. It is against the rules. You are not allowed to do that. And he went after those Black women like mad. He called them bitches. He threatened them. He put his hands on one of them women, and they handled it so professionally. You have to remember, these poll workers are volunteers. Right. And they're just telling him what the rules are. So when he saw that they were serious, like, no, sir, you can't vote. And even after pushing and stuff, they were like, you got to go. He took his hat and threw it out the door as if that was going to change anything. Yeah. We are really going to be seeing some madness.
Yeah. The only thing that doesn't worry me about anything on DC is this. Like Regina Frisk is saying in the comments, Joe Biden is the president. If things get out of hand, he's not going to just sit there and watch TV like Donald Trump did on January 6th.
And
When
had
he
dance parties.
And when he gets offered the because remember, National Guard is the governors of the states call out the National Guard. The president can federalize it, but usually that's only after they've been offered by the states. And so just like Maryland tried to offer theirs, DC tried to offer police, Virginia, all these surrounding states, Pennsylvania offered on January 6th to send their National Guard, and Trump would not accept. So I think that is the one thing that we really have to thank our stars for, because should that happen there. But not only that, we're very lucky that in some of these battleground states, they do have Democratic governors who also will call out their National Guard. And I think, like, for example, when we're talking about the count, Arizona's on Pacific time, right?
Yeah.
Well, Arizona doesn't count their early vote until that night after the last vote is cast. Well, if it's Pacific time and they close at 8:00, right? That's already 11:00 on the East Coast. So there's no way you're going to get a result by their 8:00 time when they just start counting their early ballot. And guess what? Early ballots, early vote, and Trump might shoot himself in the foot with this. Early vote has skyrocketed among Republicans.
Yes.
Republicans
and so
are a third.
His numbers are high.
Yeah.
But you have to take into account
Right.
that those are early votes.
Yeah, but guess what? They're now leveling out more in these last couple of days. But about a third of the early vote are his people. So he's gonna, and this is where the madness of who this man comes in, is that these people who early voted for him know they early voted for him. You can't have it both ways, that you have a third of the early vote and the early vote shouldn't count,
right,
or should be disqualifying. And here's the thing, because we have so many ways for people to vote now, right? Because remember, there were places that always had all early votes, and then for the most part, everybody went on election night and cast their ballot, pulled the lever back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Now that it's like a patchwork quilt. Every state has different rules as to when they close their polls, when they start their early count, when they do their final count, if they have to do a second count, if it has to be certified by who else, before they announce it. So with the expectation that there are 50 states plus several territories, every last one of them has different rules. Why should we expect to get one answer on that one night?
That's right.
Let me jump in. Well, one thing I'm going to say, though, isn't it really just come down to the 7 swing states, really and truly?
I think it might, but here's the thing. If she pulls Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania by midnight, it's done. He doesn't have a route. He doesn't really have a route. He'd have to pick up all the other ones, which is Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, and there's one other one, but he'd have to pick up all those plus keep all of his and maybe flip one blue state.
Okay, so let me catch up with comments, and also I'm going to read a part of an article that was published back in the New York Times that I think relates to the subject here, the amping up of violent rhetoric. So Jen Meyer says, doing well, Dr. Vibe. Hope you are also. I am ready. I'll be here for the watch party. Glad I voted because the lines in person will be off the chain. Well, I'm already hearing they're off the chain. Regina says, is 45 a Prince fan? I had 1981 flashbacks with that mic simulation at the rally last night.
Oh,
early dementia is in full swing.
Yeah, I got to have a look at that. Yeah, because I heard about it today.
Rude remarks and inappropriate sexual behavior. She also says, I predict martial law. I am leaving the country on November 8th. Thank God Joe Biden is the president and he can protect Harris as their new leader. Actually, it was funny. I was chatting with an associate yesterday, and he says if Ms. Harris doesn't win, he's already on his way to Jamaica. I said, well, if you need a place to stay, we have one down there. Michelle Hayward, what is up? Good evening. YouTube is at it again with your cover image when you all are live. Well, it's a good cover image I put up there, gets people's attention. I hope they didn't do anything funny, but you tell me, Michelle. Regina also says, good advice on avoiding white bros, Aisha. MAGA is poisoning everything. I saw that MAGA had confrontation. He did not do anything to the white women. The black women were fierce and strong. Regina says, I predict the tribal votes go to Harris. And she also says, Florida, 85 to 90% of the Puerto Rican vote is now going to Harris, 1.52 million Florida residents. And if I have your lady's permission, I'm going to read a bit of an article.
Go ahead.
From the New York Times. 45 has turned it up to an 11. This is written by a gentleman named Thomas B. Edsall. Mr. Edsall contributes a weekly column from Washington, D.C. on politics, demographics, and inequality. And this was done from October 16th. I'm just going to read a part of it because I think it relates to the rhetoric. So he says, 45 is so dependent on racial and ethnic antagonism that without it, he'd be a marginal figure relegated to the sidelines. 45's constant demonization of Black people and immigrants has inured the public to the fact that he is first, or certainly most explicit, modern president and party nominee to transparently generate, not to mention exacerbate, fear and white animosity toward people of color. Despite his appeal to a small, if potentially crucial segment of Black and Hispanic men, racial bigotry has been central to 45's appeal from his initial quest in 2015 and 2016 to take over the Republican Party. In the closing days of the 2024 election, he continues to foment race hatred and rely on it even more intently. In the book, the 2018 book, The Identity Crisis, 2016 Presidential Campaign and the Battle for the Meaning of America, by political scientists John Sides, Michael Tesler, and Lynn Vavarek. I hope I got that name right. If not, my head, not my heart. Documented the success of 45's strategy. Quote, 45 was destructive in how he tapped into white grievance, unquote, they wrote. Quote, 45's primary campaign became a vehicle for a different kind of identity politics, unquote. One oriented towards capitalizing on the feeling of many white people that they were being, quote, pushed aside in an increasingly diverse America, unquote. 45 crushed his primary opponents by magnifying and mobilizing the racial resentment and bitter discontent endemic in the Republican electorate. How endemic? Sides, Vester, and Vaverick wrote in late 2015, a PRRI survey found that 64% of Republicans claim to believe that, quote, discrimination against whites has become as big a problem as discrimination against Blacks and other minorities, unquote. 45 has consistently capitalized on the vulnerability and the racial prejudice of these white voters, repeatedly legitimizing their sense of victimization and grievance. Quote, there is a definite anti-white feeling in this country, and that cannot be allowed, unquote, 45 told Time magazine in April. Quote, and I'll read just a little bit more because it goes on for a while, but just says, I'll just go to another paragraph here. For 45, the angry Republican electorate has been fertile ground, and it's getting even more so as the United States inexorably removes from one overwhelming white majority to a white minority. From 2010 to 2022, the non-Hispanic white share of the population fell to 58.9% from 63.8% in roughly 20 years, according to the U.S. Census. Whites are predicted to make up less than half of the population. 45 initially rose to power on the backs of white voters who felt most aggrieved by what they saw in the subversion of their status, employment, and income by an ascendant people of color. What does 45's rise say about the level of bigotry and prejudice in this country? Stanley Feldman, a political science at Stony Brook University, emailed his response to my query, quote, there is no question that 45 has made appeals to whites who are threatened by the growing size and influence of Blacks and Latinos, a central part of his campaign and rhetoric. I could go on longer, but I'll just leave it at that.
It's a
really good article, and
it's a good article. What you read is true. However, I don't know how much about. I noticed how things take different perspective no matter who you are. For example, in the very second paragraph that you were reading, he said that Trump is probably the first president. No, and first nominee to be that explicit about race. It's not, that's not true. That's something that I think that a lot of white people are telling themselves now, because the truth of the matter is that 1948, Strom Thurmond ran on the Dixie Party. He ran on segregation. Then George Wallace also ran in 1968 when he got shot. He was the governor of Alabama, the racist governor who stood in the doorway while they were trying to desegregate the University of Alabama. One of the women who was there, she passed away now, but was the sister-in-law of Eric Holder. Okay, then Nixon with his Southern strategy, just blatantly racist, and then Reagan kicked off his campaign in Neshoba County on the issue of Neshoba County, Mississippi, on the issue of states' rights. And remember that Neshoba County is where Freedom Summer took place. Neshoba County is where Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner were murdered. So, and he kicked that off exactly 20 years later in that space. So
he's not the only one. This is a part of history.
Right. We have to get to we got to stop we got to be honest. It's not a bug in the Republican Party. This is a feature at this point. I went all the way back to 1948, starting with Strom Thurmond. So to say that, oh, Trump did, no, they paved the way. You know what Trump did? What happened was that after Reagan, Republicans realized, ooh, well, racism, people are like moving away from us now after Reagan, because remember, Reagan won 49 states the first time. Okay?
Wow.
Right. And so that should tell you something. But the concern now, the reason that it's so much stark and more clear to Trump people now, clear to us and other people, is that we didn't have social media.
Yeah.
People are able, you didn't see, for example, you couldn't see what people in California were doing unless it made national news. So all these things that we hear about and we see, it feels like it is, new because the way that it's being brought to us is new, but this was ongoing. This was happening, but because it was happening in little silos, and in the 90s, there got to a point where the media just wasn't covering the racism until the Rodney King riots. But between the mid to late 80s through 1992, it seems like that era racism had died down. And now that it seems like, oh, Trump's not making it worse. It's the fact that he has more avenues and more eyes on him. That man can burp, fart, blink his eyes or whatever, and the media is gonna cover it.
And that's what he loves,
because that's the problem.
He's one of those who has to continuously have his face or his presence or his words all needs to be on him. He is a media hog. He uses every aspect that he can. If that means he has to say some of the worst of the worst to get the media, he's doing that. But that is also a strategy. Mm-hmm. And he knows that that's a strategy, and he knows that it works for him because he is rallying what I always say, the base of fear, the base of hate. The more and more you speak that language, the better. And we've already said that this is the same playbook as Hitler. And the more and more that I study Hitler, because for a long time I really, just that wasn't something that was very, very interesting to me, in the fact that I know it was absolutely horrible. But I didn't want to go down that road because it was so atrocious. But now, in the last year or two of me studying that, I'm like, oh my God, this is the exact footsteps. And for people not to see that when we saw it so clearly after it happened there is frightening.
Well, and for the writer to say that it was Trump, which not only goes back to what I said, but let's go even back even further. Hitler was inspired by the segregation in this country.
This
Sent
country.
people to this country to study how they were doing it in the South. Okay, so now, you know what? Racism, and I wrote this article basically that, racism is as American as apple pie.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
100%.
it's not like, oh, racism just came out of nowhere. The first people that left England and came to the United States got off the boat with their racism when they decided that they were going to take the land that was already owned and call it theirs. And then gave the indigenous people blankets infested with smallpox. So this country was, quote unquote, founded, however you find something that's already discovered and owned, but founded on racism.
I'm reading this book called White Trash, and I absolutely love it. It really does dig deep about how this country got started and what the reasoning was for it. And then, England sent all of the undesirables, and out of the undesirables, they made their own hierarchy. So you're looking at rejects coming to give themselves power over here and build off the backs of others and things that are not theirs. And, oh, look, this land is free. Oh, excuse me, you was here first? Oh, no, I won't take it now. We're going to move you over here. These are things that came out of their own wants and needs of being powerful because they couldn't be in their own country.
All right, some comments.
Real quick, think of that song. This land is my land.
There, yep.
This land is our land.
Got it. 100%. 100%. All right, getting some echoing on Laura's end.
Me?
No, I get it. We're getting on your end.
Okay. This is weird. Okay, hold on. All right, so let me catch up with comments. So Lala says everyone who's going to the polls, not pools, but you should maybe go for a swim after. You need to cleanse yourself off. Be fully aware of the surroundings. Regina says, what about George Wallace?
Yep.
She also says, sick of 45. Love the way Harris handled the hecklers in North Carolina today. Also, Michelle's speech to get out the vote in Georgia had me in tears. So brilliant and profound. She is inspirational. Before I go to more comments, how would this race be different if Michelle Obama was running?
Well, I mean, I don't like to speculate on that myself because she really hates politics. And for a while, you had a lot of women, specifically white women, like, we need to get Michelle. We need to get Michelle. I'm like, how many times I'm going to respect that woman because she went through way too much, supporting her husband's aspirations. But she has expressed so much how she does not like politics. The fact that she's out here now campaigning this much with Kamala Harris shows that how important this race is. Shows how important. Remember, because she's got two daughters who are in their childbearing years. Okay, and so I think that she's doing this for her kids, right? For kids and country. And so I think that I think that because I could never see it as a possibility, I can't even speculate because she just doesn't have it in her to do it.
My thing is, I know she doesn't, and I know why she's doing it. But if you think you see some bad stuff now with our vice president, baby, you can ramp that up by 10 times. That whole family would have been dragged. And you want to talk about serious security, they would have had to triple their security.
Yep. I mean, you see how they were when they were in the White House. You saw how that was. Put it this way: if people had balls enough to go up to the fence of the White House and put an Obama mannequin on a noose and hang it from that fence. Yeah, it's funny because here's the one thing. We hear about, quote unquote, 2 assassination attempts on Donald Trump, right? You know what we never heard about? And we know there were hundreds, thousands of them maybe, are the death threats on the Obamas. And I promise you, when you go to look at those the FBI records when they come out, we're gonna be amazed, because we know that they existed, right? We know that they existed. So I think that's why I think that she wouldn't have done that.
Interesting. All right.
Put it this way: America's ugliness. Kamala Harris wins. It's going to be amazing policy-wise. But I promise you, it's like, racists are exhausting people. They're exhausting as people, okay? They are exhausting as people. But isn't that the whole fundamental point of racism? Their whole point is to wear you down so you stop and you don't, and you stop trying to change the things.
The long game.
Right, that make them uncomfortable. And I think that they're gonna go back to doing the things that they were doing between 2008 and 2016, right?
All right, some comments in the chat room, and don't worry, Lala is just logged out and logged back in because for some reason when Aisha is talking, there's echoing on her end, and I have to mute her, so I don't want to have to mute her manually. So Regina says, Jake Tapper asked Seth Meyer if 45's winning would benefit his comedy show. Seth looked horrified. He said he can find humor in many other things. Capitalist media.
Yep.
He's off of 45. Michelle says they would have dragged the Obamas, including their daughters, if Michelle had run. Regina says the last chapter of her book, when she sat back on the steps eating her toasted cheese sandwich, does not show a woman who wants to be POTUS. She is too down to earth. And then Regina says the races are exhausting, ignorant, and sinister.
Yeah.
But when have they not been? Look at our history. They could care less as long as they feel like they're the ones in power. I mean, anytime that people are going to kill children and not care, spit in your face and see you as monkeys, and never even think twice about it. This is their history, and we can't expect them to change. Although I will say there are some that have come out and talked about how they've manifested their change and how they've seen things, but something major had to happen in their life to someone that they love before that absolutely happens.
Right. And the funny thing of it is that, you got people on the right saying, well, you're like, JD Vance is being the same kind of racist that Trump is. And they're like, well, he can't be racist because his kids are half Indian. Well, you know what? Strom Thurmond also had a half Black daughter.
And Mitch McConnell.
Of course.
But that's one
Mitch
of
McConnell what?
Well, his wife.
Oh, that's right.
Asian?
Right. And but and I know and that's one of Lala's favorite all-time politicians. So
who is stepping down this month? This month, yes.
He can't hang no more. Old turtleneck can't hang no more. You gotta go.
He's like, Well, you know why? Because I think he doesn't believe that he'll get reelected to leadership after his book came out and he trashed Trump.
Yeah, that's
true.
And
not only that, I have to say that even though Kentucky is majority a red state, there, like Louisville is not, but there are, because it's patches, of course, of blue. He just sees the writing on the wall. These people don't care for him, but Andy Bashir is becoming more and more convincing to his constituents because of how he runs things in that country, in that county, and in that whole state. He still has stood firm on everything that he said, and more people are seeing him as an open door for people to walk through and change their minds.
Yeah.
All right. So we've talked a little about this already. Anything further about concerns about reactions to outcomes of the U.S. president's election? And before we get to that, just want to say for people who stick around for the live at the end of today's conversation, there's Ask Aisha and LaLa Anything. So if you got questions for them, hold on, or as the old song, hold on, wait a minute. And you'll be able to ask them anything. If you don't ask them questions, I will ask them questions. But concerns about reactions to the outcomes. You've talked a little bit about it earlier on. Any further concerns you have?
I don't think it'll be federal this time. If they do any type of insurrection-like activity, any kind of coup, I don't think it'll be on the federal. I think the lesson that they learned was that they will probably, if they overwhelm the state houses, they feel like it might be too many different things going on to catch focus. But I don't think that they'll go federal.
You're reading my alleged mind, because I'm going to share a story from today.
Well, I've got one more thing to say before you share that story.
Okay.
Also, not only just that, but if you've noticed that there's been stories that have been kind of tucked away in the media about all the people who had their hand in destroying ballots and being charged in Georgia. These people are now being sentenced, not a slap on the wrist, baby girl. No, you got to go and serve time.
Yeah, but if 45 gets in, he'll find a way of them getting out.
We're not claiming that, Dr. Vibe. It's not happening.
I'm just saying.
And I mean, here's the other part of it too.
I said
yeah, but here's the other part of it too, and that's going to make him. People are wondering why there was this descent into madness this week. And it's because of a story that the national media did not cover. But I sent LaLa and Jill in our text chat this story. Young Thug pled guilty in Fani Willis's RICO case. Okay? Which means he's flipping. That was the case that all the people were watching to see how that outcome would come out to determine how she was going to do the Trump case. Okay, because that is also a RICO case.
Yes.
She got the main person to flip. Okay, and plead guilty. So that you could best believe, look, while the rest of the news media in all these people, the pundits and everybody took their eye off that, I promise you, Trump wakes up every morning at 3:15 because he's so bothered by it. Look, because he's so bothered by it, and Googles Fani Willis to see what she's doing. He Googles Fani Willis. He Googles Chutkin. He Googles the judge up in New York City. And you know how you know it bothers him?
Major news.
You know how you know the cases are bothering him? Because who does he say he's going to appoint as Attorney General?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Little Miss
Eileen Cannon. That one case that went away.
That she fell right into his little clutches, and she's just as quickly as she could be.
Because, I mean, I'm concerned about the reactions because Donald Trump was evil the last time, but he wasn't evil and crazy.
Yeah, he's completely lost everything.
Right now, he's evil and crazy.
Would you say he's reverted to his old school style? Because some of us.
No, this is beyond that. Dr. Vibe, he was simulating oral sex on a microphone yesterday because the microphone went out.
Yes. You didn't see that?
That's what that comment was about. Is Trump a fan of Prince? He was doing that. The guy put on this yellow vest earlier in the week, looking like somebody's elementary school safety patrol, and tried to get into a garbage truck. Was stumbling, walking, needed help to get into the garbage truck, and then when he did, in a garbage truck, doubled down on the garbage comment about Puerto Ricans.
Yes.
While he was in a garbage truck.
Wow.
So I don't.
Wow.
So and those are just two things from this week. There was also the Liz Cheney thing from this week. There was. I mean, the fact of the matter is that, and then the more he's out there calling people dumb, calling people this, calling people that, and like every Republican accusation is an admission. This man is he's crazy. He's losing his faculties, and he's evil. So he's an even bigger threat this time than he was before.
Last time. Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Nicole Wallace made a good point when she said, it is time at this point. Once he did that thing, he said, it is time, George W. Bush. You need to say something about what you plan on doing, because he threatened the daughter of your vice president.
Exactly.
And so, it's like at this point, and I get why George Bush isn't saying anything, because guess what? Until 2017, he was the worst president in recent history. Okay.
Yep.
I don't think he wants people to remember how bad he was, because guess what? The gifts of Trump to him is that Trump is far worse. He's like, I'm bad, but my God, when
No, hold on. Do I have permission to read this article? I know
yes.
I want to get this in. Okay, so this is an article from today. U.S. election 2024 news update. Washington State activates National Guard.
Yeah.
In case of election violence.
Ain't no in case. They know it's coming.
Yep.
Right.
And see, I think the states that have Democratic governors, those governors, I think, are already going to be on point and have their National Guards activated like Washington. States we need to worry about are Georgia and North Carolina, because if those southern states flip, they got Republican. Well, North Carolina actually has a Democratic governor, but so that might be okay. But Georgia, please.
It's civil war.
Because North Carolina's got a double whammy to deal with. They gotta help the rest of us avoid Trump, and then they gotta avoid Mark Robinson as governor. Hang in there, North Carolina.
Wow. Like, some of me says that whatever the aftermath is, there's going to be violence.
Yeah. Well, see, you know what? My daughter and I were having this conversation earlier this week. It's funny because a lot of the reason, I think, us being here in America, in the country, we don't get as much international news as other countries get.
Right.
And for that reason, the way that our government runs with a federal law, state laws, city laws, in neighborhood ordinances. And then don't forget, if you live in a subdivision, there's also a homeowners association. Okay. So we live under all these rules all the time. But for people who are outside our country, the fact that we have a federal government and state governments, and at times they come in direct opposition of each other, is confusing to people. It really is confusing people, because people in other places don't understand. Why don't you just have, a federal law?
Right.
Period. Because remember, we're a country. We're not a continent. The continent includes Canada and Mexico. You go someplace like France they have a country law. I'm sure they have other ordinances and things like that, but their whole country has a law. It makes no sense as to why our individual states have to have laws on certain. Think about it this way: certain things are crimes in Connecticut that are not crimes in Alabama and vice versa. The fact that we can travel interstate without having to use passports or anything like that in the country, within the country, and we only know our local state laws and barely know all of those. The idea that I could go to Alabama and break a law that is not a law where I'm from, I could get arrested and thrown into prison when I did not know something was, and a lot of these states have some stupid laws that they never got rid of from the 1700s. So the fact of the matter is, like, wait a second, but I did not know that was a law. But that will not be an excuse. And it should be, actually. Because the truth is, the one thing that we know is that like, that every country, murder. We know that in every state, murder is against the law. However, certain states treat murder differently than others. Some have involuntary manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter.
Ask me how I know. Ask me how I know.
Right.
Mississippi.
How
I know.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous. We should have one statute. And because of that, even we get confused because people are not, these concerns about the reactions, a lot of these reactions to the outcome are going to be because people don't realize that they have it two ways. Yes, the presidential election part on your ballot is not run by the federal government. Okay, every state, it just happens to be on a state ballot. People don't realize that the only reason that Kamala is on the ballot in every state was because the Biden campaign went and did that paperwork. Every time it's like we don't hear about that because we expect it, right? But think about this. Why is Cornel West not on the ballot in all the states? Because he couldn't get on the ballot in all the states. He didn't have enough signatures, right? So these processes are why I worry about reactions, because there's so many processes and people don't understand them.
All right. LaLa, anything you want to add? I always like looking at LaLa's facial reactions because they speak so much. Anything you want to add, LaLa?
Well, it just struck a serious chord, and I understand it. But Aisha made an extremely valid point. Things that are okay in mostly northern states are totally different in the southern states, and you have to look at the history from that. And you would think by now, living in 2024, things would change, but they're not. They're actually going backwards, and that's a very frightening thing. And so it wrenches my heart. It felt like a punch in my gut when Aisha said that, because all this week I've been fighting that. And so I'm actually seeing that myself in a circumstance that I am dealing with my family. So, people around the world don't understand. And I can also see that as a point as well, because traveling back and forth from Portugal to America and seeing how the Portugal people are looking at me going, what's going on over there? Many of the older people just shake their head and say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Then I had someone that I had coffee with where he was praising Trump and I was like, you don't know anything about our country, do you? And so when I sat here and explained to him about our country, he was like, oh, I didn't know. Then a couple of weeks later, he said, I went and researched that. I was wrong. So we have a serious problem, and we're seeing it manifest loud and proud because now we are at a point in our lives where we can see more news, more things are being reported. People like you and I are able to go out with our phones and we're able to record things and put them up for people to see. Whereas even though the media keeps things quiet, us people down here in the marching lines are still able to get the word out.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk more about elections and what's going on in the US. And also I've never listened to this artist, but this artist has now flipped her support. So yes. So the ladies will address it because I don't know nothing much about this artist, but we'll take a little break and we'll give them a chance to breathe. We'll see in a bit.
Well, I've just finished a wonderful session here with Dr. Vibe. I am Bernadette Hamilton Reed, an 8th-generation African Nova Scotian, and I am the owner and founder of Sankofa Bookkeeping. But you know what? Sponsorship. That's what today was about. Don't be afraid to ask, and that's what Dr. Vibe is teaching us. Don't be afraid to ask for things. Leverage those partnerships. Psychographics. I didn't realize how important psychographics are on finding out about people and their likes. What keeps people up at night? Do the video conferencing, ask them for something, and also find out what is their pressure points, what is their problem, solve it. So, the stuff that Dr. Vibe says, and don't sell yourself low. When I started working with Dr. Vibe, $50 an hour, I am now up to almost $5,000 a month in engagement with my customers because of the things I've taken away. So when you go to these events, listen to what's told and use it. So thank you, Dr. Vibe, for opening up. And again, align yourself with what these people are doing, what they're asking for, and make sure you ask for what you're worth. Don't sell yourself short. Thank you again for the opportunity to learn about how to get more sponsorships. And we do not use the word in kind. We want the sponsorship. Thank you again.
All right. So earlier
I
on,
love the way Canadians speak.
earlier on this week, I was in this country.
I love the way you guys say about.
Yeah. I was in Ottawa, this country's capital, and I was asked to share a presentation about aligning yourself for sponsorship. So that was one of the people who said positively, and it was a great experience because for people who ever want to record audio through their tablet, and if you're doing speaking and you don't have, just using your tablet audio, it's never a great experience. So I was able, she did it nicely there, but when I was doing my session, I got for $20 a device that plugs into my tablet and also had a lavalier microphone. The audio is amazing.
Yeah, I have one.
It's absolutely amazing. So want to say thank you to Bernadette. But the sad thing is, while I was doing my presentation, then after I had people doing video testimonials, and I hadn't plugged the thing out of the tablet. So I've got great videos, but no audio. But saving grace, they're all meeting with me so they can record something online. There we go. Nice. So let's get back. Oh, we have a comment here. Oh, look who's in the house. One of our friends who is going to be here on Tuesday night. Speaking about Tuesday night, this Tuesday coming out November 5th, yep. Where are you going to be in the world? Well, this is where you should be. Let me get Dr. Tachi off and we love you, Dr. Tachi, but not this time, not on my screen right now. Let me get you off. Sorry. There we go. Election Watch Party live this Tuesday. I think I have to get rid of this bottom scroll so you see it fully. There we go. 2024 U.S. Presidential Election Live Watch Party. This Tuesday, November 24th, 9 p.m. Eastern, with the two ladies you're listening and watching now, Dr. Tachi, also Cesar Nadima Musa from A Black Canadian King, and also Ryan O'Neill Knight, another Black Canadian King. So make sure, unless you have an emergency, the emergencies be here hanging out with us.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of different panels of all Black people talking, but
yeah,
so
but
far, it looks like we're the only North American.
Thank you.
North American
Thank you.
North American and international conversation.
There we go. There's our little tweak on that. So that is what we're going to be doing. So hope you can make it. I'm looking forward to it so much. It's going to be because the last two ones were bombs. This is going to be the bomb diggity. All right. So okay, look at this already. Dr. Tachi in the house. Regina's hailing up Dr. Tachi, and Regina says, "Hey, sis." All right, let's get to our next conversation piece. I know nothing about this artist except
Gen
what
Z can be so exhausting, right? I mean,
I'm
those,
going.
those late
Okay,
millennials and early Gen
Lala,
Z can be
talk
so
to me.
exhausting.
You brought this story in our channel, going. I don't. Why? I don't. Well, whatever.
Because we talk a lot about people like we don't really know who they are. This is an artist, if you want to call her that. For me, I don't care. But the reason I bring this up is she really made a clown of herself by standing up and going to rallies and speaking out about being a Trump supporter.
It was
And
mostly on the basis of the stimulus check.
yeah, and then she said she was following what she sees in the ghetto where everybody says, oh, well, he gave us that check, which he never gave y'all that check. He just put his name on that check. Nancy Pelosi gave you that check. But she's, for clout. Basically, that's all they're doing. And we talk about this all the time. And this is why I wanted to talk about it. They bring up these artists who we don't even know. They don't even know. But they think they're trying to get somewhere being on stage. They're no better than Trump in that matter because he's the one who always wants to be center stage. So they figured they want to get some of that light that he shines on that. Then what does she do? She comes and she says when she voted for Harris and the damage that she has done, even though it ended within a vote for her, is absolutely disgusting. And these kids, to me, are playing games. They think that this is a joke. They think that this is old school. This is all fun and games. But when it comes down to it, it's not a game at all. So chose to make the right vote in my choice. That's my personal opinion. But the way that she did it was disgusting.
Yeah. Well, I have a Gen Z daughter and Gen Z nephew. So she's actually pretty popular among that generation.
What is her popularity? I don't.
She's
See
a
it.
rapper.
Oh, okay.
So she's pretty popular among that generation. But the problem is as Lala said, the damage that is done. You had the reason, you have a certain segment of young Black youth who already are apathetic about voting, and then she goes in there, she makes these comments, and Gen Z is a generation of people where following and likes and viral moments mean everything. And I think for us, it's a little bit difficult to understand because we're a generation where we didn't want everybody up in our business because we got away with more things. that way. We also didn't have, we're the generation, we're thankful that we didn't have cell phones and anybody taping anything, right? But these kids, they're always looking for this viral moment, right? They're always looking for who to follow, following the most popular person, or how many likes they get for a comment they make. And so what they're doing, and their celebrities that they admire do it too. And I find oftentimes that the people that you see like this, who do this the most, are typically the people who really can't just get that kind of following or support on their basis of their talent. We see that happen a lot.
Basis of the talent.
but because the talent isn't there, right? And that's why I say that. And so they try to insert themselves in things that are trending and things where where the attention is, and it's like, oh, if I say this controversial comment, I'll stand out and people cover me. Oh, I'm a rapper, a Black rapper. Oh, if I say I support Trump, because most people don't expect Black people to do that. If I say I support Trump and this is why, oh, I'm going to get covered in the media, I'll sell records. But the thought of it, and I guess this is about having a more mature mind. She's not thinking about anything but getting that press. She's not seeing that beyond her getting the press. She's speaking to an impressionable population of people who are now just grappling with the things of adulthood.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we've all been adults for 30 plus years, right? So, we have a degree of maturity. But I think that the younger generation, they're grappling with some things. And, politics was never viral. I guess, first of all, we didn't have those kind of viral moments, but politics was never something, it was never something that media, that celebrities, that artists, that actors, that anybody used for entertainment or to get famous. We don't, that's where we are now, where people are now using politics and government as a way to entertain themselves.
Okay, some comments here. Regina says, and she's anticipating the Tachi take on things this Tuesday. And also, Regina says, some kids think it's a joke, but a lot of them are serious about this election, especially pro-choice young females.
Yeah.
Historically, young voters are apathetic. Also says, she also says, David Pacman goes to 45 Bro podcasts, and none of them know doo-doo about the issues. Most of them are not registered to vote.
Right. And I mean, that's the other thing too, is that we talk about apathetic voters, and oftentimes when we talk about apathetic young voters, the conversation is veered toward young voters of color. But you know who's equally apathetic as voters? Young white men. Okay. The reliable white male voters that are going to stand there and vote for Trump are millennials and older. Okay.
Yeah.
These really young ones, young voter turnout and registration is low across the board. And I think that's the other thing that should give people faith about how this election will turn out, knowing just that bit of information. That's Trump's base.
Yeah.
That's his, that number, the number of those voters that are white males that are mid-millennials and older, that's an infinite number of voters. It's infinite. Kamala Harris has been able to grow the original base. So I think that's one thing that you can keep an eye on and should make some people feel good. There's also still opportunities to volunteer. Tomorrow I'm phone banking for Harris.
All right. Dr. Tachi says, listen, anyone looking to sexy red for choice in candidates or moral compass is a lost cause.
Thank you.
Oh, God. Lala like that. Regina says, white 45 bros are deeply clueless, most misogynistic, sorry, and racist. All right.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, but Dr. Tachi pretty much made the point that we need to wrap this up with.
Okay, we'll move on. Case closed, Dr. Tachi. Now, we haven't done a lot of international stuff lately.
No.
But Lala brought an interesting story. There are riots been going on in Lisbon, Portugal. What's going on?
Yeah, I thought this was really important to bring to the attention of the world, because it's not just America that sees division when it comes to racial issues. We live in it, we sit in it, we know what goes on in our country, but we also must be aware of what's going on in other countries as well. So at the end of October, there was a shooting of a 43-year-old Black man. His name was Odair Moniz. And it was in a suburb of Lisbon. And it happened on the 21st. And so it says that, and there's still not a lot of clarity around the story, but they say that he was fleeing police and then subsequently shot after going after the police with some kind of weapon. That actually has been debated back and forth, including the officer who actually was the one who did the shooting on this. because at some point he did come out and say that no, he didn't have a weapon, and then others said yes, he did. So it sparked a lot of outrage, and it led to some pretty violent clashes and protests. There were buses and cars set on fire. And here in Portugal, there's not a two-party system. There is a party called Xinga, and they are total authoritarian. They like to make sure they want to give police complete authority. And in fact, these areas where most of these immigrants are brought over to, you tend to live where you're comfortable. So there's pockets of cultures, just like anywhere else in America. And especially you see it in Los Angeles. But what the police have been granted in those areas is more police power. They are manned more, and they have been given the ultimate rule of authority there. So the people rose up and they are demanding that this officer be charged with murder. And this has actually spread to more than one part of the Lisbon area. There are many pockets that started to see all of these protests, and so much so that the president of Portugal came out and was very upset and was really begging people to stop these riots. This is not, he says this is not normal for Portugal. And historically, in these times, of course, we know the history of Portugal was built on the slave trade, but it tends to be more peaceful. So when these things happen, the full government gets really upset, unlike you see what we have in America. So they have calmed down with the protests, but there is still a demand for true answers, and we don't have those answers yet. So just know that there's not just civil unrest in our country. It is a worldwide situation, and we all must be able to understand other countries to understand what's going on in our own. And there comes a point where we have to give compassion to other areas and other people who are going through it in other countries. And I just am grateful that because as a little girl, I always wanted to travel. I always wanted to be I wanted to travel and sing. I am realizing those dreams now, but it also has opened up my eyes to other cultures and what they go through. Just when we went to Morocco this past year and we sang in Morocco, we were there during Ramadan, and you had to put your American away because the time that they fast, everybody fasts. And that means you too, if you don't celebrate it. So you must respect what's going on in other countries, but you also must be very aware that the same issues that we are facing in America are also being faced in other parts of the world.
Well said. Anything you want to add, Aisha?
No, I just when Lala had told me this story when we were doing girlfriends chat, well, before we did the girlfriends chat, I told her that we need to talk about this. And I think it goes back to what she was saying about how, this is why other people are watching, other countries are watching this election with our country, right? Because see, what's going on in Lisbon right now, how they're going to handle that is what they learned from 2020 here. It's what they learned from the 1960s. It's what they learned from the Rodney King riots that we mentioned earlier. It's those kinds of things. It's what they learned from Ferguson and all these things, right? So that is why we have to be very, I don't think people realize why other countries are looking towards us. You got to remember, some of these countries, particularly these European countries, aren't as diverse as our country, right? You do have pockets of people going from the Caribbean and from the continent of Africa to Europe. And of course, England had its own, England and in Europe had their own version of chattel slavery, right? But the ways in which people of color in those countries have not integrated into the political sphere, there is this, well, how do we deal with these things, because we don't have the people here to help us, to deal with them. Oh, well, we'll look at a country that does. And
Right.
so we have to keep in mind that this is why, we wonder, well, why does so-and-so care about, what's going on? This is why, because they look to us for that. But not only that, but if we're falling apart, Ukraine is watching us, because if our country falls apart, they don't need one of their allies to be falling apart.
Right.
And having to deal with their own stuff, right?
It's all tied together. It's all tied together. Yes. And what was very interesting, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
It's fine.
What was very interesting is, as I was following these news stories so closely and watching on social media, because once again, we all have the power of reporting on our own phones, right? So I was looking at a lot of things on TikTok and looking at a lot of things on Instagram Reels and seeing real people reporting. And some of the comments echo exactly the same thing that we are hearing in America, is these immigrants, these people from Africa, these people. And I had to take a breath, because you like to think, and you hear people say, if Harris wins, or if Trump wins, or we're going to move out of the country. You need to understand what that means. And don't you understand that when you do that, you are also now an immigrant in the country that you choose to go to?
Correct.
So you need to be very careful about the things you say and the things that you do and how you think you're going to take your American to another country. Because one thing that's not being talked about is Mexico is deporting people left and right back to America, because they are ruining their economy. Yeah. So you can't just pick up and take your American everywhere.
Yeah. And I mean, think about it this way. How would we feel, forget those of us, not just those of us in the lower 48, right? Think about Alaska. How would we feel if this was happening in Canada right above us?
Right.
Do you know how we would freak out if Canadians were that close, like 2-3 days close to possibly electing a man who said he's going to be a dictator on day one? Yeah. Guess what dictators do? They invade other countries.
Yes,
and they start with those countries that are to the north of them, to the south of them, to the east, and to the west, before they even try and go to another continent. Okay? And to the north of us is Canada. So how would we feel? Well, to the north of us is Canada, but to the south of Canada is America. So if they had somebody who was going to be a dictator, where's the first place they're going to go? They're going to go south, right?
And which we clearly see in Russia.
Russia, exactly.
It's the same strategy. But what people don't understand is, y'all forget about that little Bering Strait that goes straight to America that is attached to Russia.
Right. And think about it this way. Russia is doing to Ukraine and some of these other countries what we don't want Canada to do, what we wouldn't want Canada to do to us if they were going to elect their version of a Trump. It's what we wouldn't want Mexico to do to us if they were going to elect their version of a Trump. It's what we should fear if Venezuela doesn't get their stuff together, because guess what? They don't have to go through Mexico. There is that little, they don't have to go through Mexico. There is that little thing called the Gulf of Mexico that they can just hop on a ship. Okay? So, and like Laura said, there's that little strait there between Alaska and Russia. To her credit, it was stupid to say that she could see Russia from her house. The distance is just too far. But literally, Russia is close to Alaska, okay? So, I can't implore on people enough that what we're seeing going on in Lisbon is no different than things that happened here. But we should also be mindful of the fact that this isn't just an us issue.
Yes.
This is happening more and more across the globe, and
Oh, in Europe too.
in
In-
Europe too, yep.
They're
And
going
how
after it
we,
too.
yeah, and how, and even though we are a country, we're like one of these first countries that is on the brink of electing a dictator on this side of the sphere that will that would control.
This side
Right.
of the ball.
Right, because the other side of the sphere, they have Xi, they have Putin, right?
Yeah.
They have Viktor Orban. On this side, the guy, remember the president of Venezuela, he left the country, and I guess we don't even know where he is right now, right? So then there would just be this Trump guy. Not only is he evil, he's stupid, and he's falling apart, but he instituted a child separation policy.
Yeah.
Where 1,000 children still have not been reunited. We can't forget that kind of evil.
That's right.
And guess when the last, what was the last time America did that on a mass scale? During slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Separating and selling children. You can't, I guarantee you that some of those babies that were separated, those new infants, were sold.
Yes.
All right, just going to catch up and see, Lala, you dropped this subject and it's taken a life of its own here. So what I'm going to do is read some comments. Regina says, I witnessed a lot of racism in the Netherlands towards Syrian immigrants when traveling there. It was really bad. Dr. Tachi says, I think there is a perception that Europe and Europeans are on the whole are different. They were progenitors of slavery, progenitors of slavery and colonization. They are, and absolutely. Regina says, I lived in Europe in the 1960s and saw the families of my friends from South America, Africa, and Asia discriminated against by Swiss realtors. Super racist. Dr. Chachi too, Regina says, not surprised, the Dutch historically were brutal colonizers. Regina says, 100%. I was only there 2 weeks and encountered at least 4 racist interactions between the Dutch and the Arabs. Dr. Tachi says, exactly, which is why Canadians and Mexicans should take heed. It is not okay if he wins.
Mm-hmm.
We said a long while back, we should build a wall between Canada and America. That's a whole other conversation. Regina says, Dr. Tachi, how is Harris doing in Florida? Dr. Tachi says, from what I can see, there's wide support for Harris. However, there is an extreme faction here, and many Hispanics are conservative.
Right.
And okay, Michelle says, okay, I'm back from church service. Did you pray for your country? I just want to ask.
Well, let me tell you something though. Here's the thing. Dr. Chachi did say, many Latinos here are conservative, but here's the thing, and this is why Pennsylvania is so interesting, is that this area around Philadelphia, they've got between 500,000 to 600,000 Puerto Ricans, right? That's why he's been in Pennsylvania. So he's got that. But guess what else? In all these swing states, they've got concentrations of not just of the Latino population, of Puerto Ricans specifically. And the Puerto Ricans are pissed. They are pissed. First of all, I'm tired of having to remind people on Twitter that Puerto Ricans are American citizens. Hello. They might not pay income tax, but they pay into Medicare. They pay into Social Security. They pay into, what else is it? All those, Medicare, Social Security, and there's something else that they pay. Oh, workman's comp and unemployment, right? So we're not giving them anything. Talk about taxation without representation. And they do have a representative in the House.
Okay.
But still, look, Puerto Rico is to our country just like what is DC.
Okay. So
neither one has the kind of representatives that like DC doesn't have a senator.
So Dr. Chachi says they are livid. Are you saying the Puerto Ricans?
Mm-hmm.
So Michelle says they only remember Puerto Rico during election years.
Oh, let me tell you this. Right. I live in Connecticut. So we have a big Puerto Rican population. And Joy Reid kept mentioning the tri-state area of New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey. And that, let me tell you something. The radio up here, 'cause I've been flipping to it when I've been in my car and listening to the English language, his Latino networks on Sirius XM, and their talk radio. This is all they're talking about. And I've read about people who are Puerto Rican and went and voted for Trump, going back and saying, I need to take my vote back. I made a mistake, and realizing that that's not how it works. So I was telling Lala about how this one guy that happened to, after he early voted, this happened with Trump. And then what he ended up doing was volunteering for Harris. And he's taking people, he's like, yeah, my one vote might go there, but I'm gonna make sure that there's 20 more votes that go to her. So he's been taking Puerto Ricans to the polls to early vote and vote for Harris. And a lot are doing that who early voted for Trump. And look, that's why he can't get. He's so upset that he can't get rid of the stain of that. That is really upsetting him, because he thought he had Latinos on lock.
Lala, anything you want to add?
I voted in Florida, so my little vote went to Harris. And it's been counted.
Okay.
I laugh when I drive around here and I see people with Trump dance signs on their yard, and they also have a sign that says, "Please be kind." I'm like, that's your candidate.
All right. Regina says, I just looked it up. 68% of Florida's 2 million Cubans are said to be pro-Trump. Dr. Chachi says, yet there are Barica Puerto Ricans who will still vote for him.
Yeah.
And then Dr. Chachi says, but that same energy should have been there before they denigrated Puerto Ricans.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
But I guess, you know what? Better late than never.
Yeah. And I think we have to remind people that Latinos are not a monolith, even though people think they are. Mexicans are not Puerto Ricans. So the issues that are important to Puerto Ricans are not necessarily the issues that are important to Mexicans. For example, Puerto Ricans, immigration is not one of their issues. They're citizens, right? Immigration is not one of the, but white people tend to think that, oh, it's an issue for all Latinos. Well, why would it be an issue for people who are actual citizens, right? It's just, Cubans are not Mexican, nor are they Puerto Rican. They have totally different issues. So, and then there's Dominican Republic, and then of course all the South American things. So I think that people, in thinking that, the Latino community, no, guess what? The Puerto Rican community is going to think differently than other factions.
All right. And Dr. Tachi agrees with you, Aisha, saying very true. All right. Well, we haven't done this for a while, so we're going to end off this conversation. Haven't done it for a long, long time. So if anyone's up to it, ask Aisha and Lala anything. We haven't done this for a while, so we're going to pull it out. And I got a question for both of you ladies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I could end with this. I'm going to end with this. Okay, here's a last show. I talked to you about, is this election causing a divide between men and women? So this week, unfortunately, I couldn't see the story on the NPR, but I did hear it on Morning Edition. They had former Republican pollster Frank Luntz on, and he's distanced himself from MAGA. but interesting poll, or he did a focus group with a group of men. Now they did not get down to the nationality of men, but they basically, almost every one of the men said they weren't going to vote for Harris. And one of the reasons, many of them said that they would have voted for Hillary Clinton, they would have voted for Michelle Obama, which makes me think that the reason why they're not voting for Kamala Harris is that they didn't have a man in their life who was a political, who had a history in politics, which I found very, very
Wait, say
interesting.
it again.
No, so many of the men said they wouldn't vote for. They said they would vote. They would have voted for Hillary Clinton. I think they may have voted for Hillary Clinton in the past. They would have voted for Michelle Obama if she had run, but they wouldn't vote for Kamala Harris. And now some of them said, well, she doesn't have enough experience. Meaning, and I sort of read between the lines saying, oh, because Hillary Clinton and Michelle Obama had husbands who were presidents, they would have voted for her, but they're not voting for Kamala Harris because she doesn't have enough experience, or basically one of them said, hey, she doesn't got, she's not going to make a good enough leader because she doesn't, her husband this and this and that.
There's also something else that Hillary Clinton and Michelle Obama have in common that I think is even above this to how men are viewing women in this position. That is different with Kamala is that they have both have given birth to children, right? Because remember this whole thing. Who is on that ticket talking about women who give birth? JD Vance. So there's that part, because I guarantee you if they dug deeper and asked these men what they think women's lives are and what they should do,
it did. Yeah, there was a lot.
I think that would definitely come up.
I'd like to say, well, what's a woman's role in society, in their opinion,
right?
But it didn't go there. We do have questions for you. First of all, Regina says, okay, do you both think the Netflix documentary on Prince should be released as is?
Yes. Because some of the things that people are quote unquote concerned about, I already knew about. And I actually probably know more than is in the documentary. Actually, I know for a fact on certain situations, I do know more than what made it into the documentary. And I think that the thoughts that people have about some of these things, or one thing in particular, check yourself.
I think it needs to be released now. I think that the fact that they're holding it back is it says a lot. The reason to me that it was held back is because they feel like if it's released with the truths, that people can't handle the truths, and they don't want any blemishes on their product now, because now Prince become their commodity.
Right.
And they don't want to hurt anything that has to do with funds that are coming to them. Me personally, as hard as it is for me to hear some of these stories coming out, the thing that hurts me a lot is how he treated his other groups, like how the family couldn't keep their name, how the Time couldn't keep their name. And that was their livelihood. That was not a pretty part of what Prince did. Although he also did a lot of good, but what it shows is that he's human, and we all are, whether we like it or not. I think it's ridiculous that it's being held back. I think that it would do the world some good to actually hear some truths.
Who is holding it back?
The estate.
The estate. And two more things on this, and these will be the last two things I say on it. One thing that's funny is that you end up finding out later, or depending on who you know, that even though Prince was out there fighting to get out of his contract, he was keeping people in contracts, right? For like a decade or more. And that's the sad part, right? It doesn't, in my opinion, knowing these things doesn't take away from who he is as an artist. What I think is that people struggle with how they feel about him, and that perhaps this might change that. And I think for me, I guess the first time I heard these things wasn't when I read this article that people are, about this thing. I've heard these things years ago, right? And the first time I heard them was kind of like, oh God, it was a gut punch. But then I had to ask myself, why was it a gut punch? You should, what celebrities and people that you admire and love can be horrible people at times. Guess what? We all can be horrible and mean and nasty to people sometimes. We all have that. It doesn't take away from people's talents or the impact that they have. And the last thing I'll say on this is the estate is holding this up. I advise people to go and investigate, read, study up on what happened with the Jackson estate, and understand that one of the people who owns the Prince estate was the attorney for Catherine Jackson and the children at one time, and lost their case against the people that controlled Michael Jackson's estate. And I think the thing that was learned from that is how you make money off of one of those estates if you own it and the family does not. And the lesson to be learned is that sold part of it for $1 billion a couple years ago. Earlier this year, sold another part for almost $2 billion. And there's one more other part that they're looking to sell in some form or fashion and the offer is no less than $1 billion. And the thing of it is guess what? People keep saying, oh, we want a Prince fans. Oh, when's this box set coming out? No, it's not happening. They're not going to do it, because if they do that and saturate the market with these products, the value to sell it goes down. The ultimate goal is to get this up to the $1 billion to $2 billion that the Jackson estate was worth, and to sell it. Period.
And let's not forget, you have to really be paying attention to what's going on in the music world. Justin Bieber sold his catalog with the understanding that anything that he creates now moving forward, he still will get paid on. But he sold it for what was like almost the largest amount. So there goes to show you that these catalogs are important. And so what happens with that? You have to remember, when people like Sony and Warner Brothers buy these catalogs, they no longer have to pay anyone. It now belongs to them. So once that is sold and there's nothing else coming to that person, all of the money and all the license can go anywhere they want it to go.
Yeah. And also to keep this in mind, right? What you just said about Sony. Sony just bought Queen's catalog. And one of the clauses in that contract that sticks out and should stick out to everyone, and I saw this on a TikTok video too, is the clause that allows Sony to be able to use, remember, because Sony also makes movies, they also make TV shows. They get to use all of Queen's catalog without having to pay.
That's a strike right there. Right. Good stuff. All right, next. So Jen says, Aisha, 100 to what you were saying a few moments ago. So then Regina has a follow-up question. So what happens to Paisley Park if they sell the catalog?
They sell it to Universal. Doesn't Universal make theme parks?
Yes.
And Universal already does the publishing for Prince's music. They just sell it to Universal. Universal takes it and probably leaves it as it is, but they market it as a Prince theme park or museum, or like they do with Universal Studios and all that stuff.
So
and then Universal, you know what? Oh, you can record in Prince's studio. You can record in Prince's studio. You can like they have right now with the you can Airbnb the Purple Rain house, and well, guess what? You can Airbnb and sleep in the room that Prince died in. That's just gonna happen.
All right. Dr. Chachi says, great take that you gave just a few moments ago, Aisha. Another question for Aisha again. Dr. Chachi says, LaLa is already doing some stuff in Portugal. Aisha, would you consider residing in another country?
Yeah. But I'm so attached to my family and being near my family. And but you know what though? I could probably, if I did, I actually wanted to go to Canada because it's another country, right? different way of living, but I wouldn't be so far that I couldn't go visit my family. Because what is it, 8 hours from Connecticut?
Okay.
That's a drive.
Yeah, exactly.
We take you.
Hey, listen, I go from Florida to Kentucky all the time. That's longer than that drive from Florida to Kentucky.
My sisters go to Toronto all the time.
Okay.
So, and they love it there.
Okay. Question from me. Has this election caused any heated conversations in your families at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but some confusion.
Want to elaborate?
Because I'm going to be careful of my words on this one. Because it took on the role of women's bodies, and they feel like this whole election that Democrats are only running on abortion, and they are firmly against that. And so they have decided not to vote, and I don't agree with that.
Yeah, my father is in the South, and I have family there. The ones that vote, no, I don't. No. On my mother's side of family, we always talk about politics. Thanksgiving's coming up. We're going to be talking about politics then, right? My grandfather is a registered Republican because he was a city councilman. And I asked my grandfather this years ago because he was in that seat in the 90s. And I asked him, because my grandfather is a fiscal conservative, but liberal on more liberal on some of these policies, because I've gone back and I've read the city council minutes where he was the chair there, right? And one of the things he told me was that, being Black in this part of the state, in this city council, I never would have gotten elected.
Wow.
But then when he got elected, and I'd read this, for example, they wanted to cut, this is years ago, they wanted to cut funding to the schools, but give a raise to the superintendent.
Well, ain't that the way that it goes all over the world right now?
And my grandfather, being the Republican, was like, why would we do that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand I don't understand what he did to get a raise that we have to take it from the kids.
Right.
Okay. So Dr. Tachi says it was common for older Black people to be Republicans, quote, the party of Lincoln, unquote. Michelle says if she had to go somewhere, she'd be going to Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Now, and LaLa, so just building on what you said, coming back to what I said at the beginning of this segment about that poll that Frank Luntz had, he said that one of the things that a lot of these men were saying is that they felt the Democratic Party was anti-man. They're pushing women and just forgetting about men, and this is why these men are going to be voting, I think, who may be formerly Democratic leaning now to 45, because 45 is strong. He's strong, and he's,
so strong that he women, right? I can't say the word because YouTube will get us, but so strong.
But remember that saying, when you're used to privilege, equality feels like oppression. Mm-hmm. That is what this is. Here is the thing. If men were dying from Viagra, this would not be a question of why it be a focus, right? Women are dying from things that we shouldn't be dying from, period. That's the first thing. But beyond that, when have we not prioritized men's issues in any election? You can't have it both ways. You can't say that men are head of the household, and then we have all these economic policies to benefit men and people who are head of the household, and then turn around and cry that, we're focusing on women's issues. Well, you know why we're focusing on it? Because women actually lost a right. That is the point. Men have
already started losing lives.
Right. And men have lost no rights. That is why there is that focus. And to be perfectly honest, let me tell you something. Lala and I had children before Roe was overturned.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have this conversation on Girlfriend's Chat because we were talking about what a pregnancy, what you go through in a pregnancy. Let me tell you something. I had group B strep after I delivered my daughter, and they had to remove some extra tissue, right? That got left behind from my cesarean because I started going into labor before the cesarean. And if they hadn't done that, that infection that I got could have been worse because I already had preeclampsia. So imagine they just knew to do that. That's what they did. They didn't have to sit and think about it. They didn't have to call lawyers, call the call the Department of Justice to find it. They just did it. But now someone else, group B strep is common. Okay, you get a test for it in pregnancy, so you know beforehand if you have it. But now doctors will not make that decision as to whether they need to treat or not. They have to go and talk to the hospital lawyer.
Yeah.
Like there's another story that came out this week about a young girl last year, 18, just graduated high school, pregnant, went to 3 different hospitals while she was miscarrying. While she's miscarrying, 3 different hospitals, and they all turned her down and she died. So this is why we're focusing on women's healthcare. And you know what? I'm sorry. Kamala did a whole plan for Black men. What more do you want?
Let me catch up with some comments. So Michelle says, Dr. Chachi, that's exactly what I was thinking. My maternal grandparents were Republicans too. Dr. Chachi says, yeah, Michelle Hayward. Oh, wow. Michelle says, men are used to being centered. They have not been centered. It's the same with whiteness. She also says, Dr. Tachi, my maternal grandfather did more civil rights than many in this country during his time. Also says, wow, Dr. Tachi says, wow, Michelle, it feels like back then civil rights was a civic duty for many of us.
And that's the bothering point about now and young people is that they don't feel like civil rights and voting being a civil right as a civic duty. People don't see voting as a civic duty. When I go to vote, I feel like, look, I'm about to do this work. That's how I look at voting. I'm about to put in this work because it's my duty.
Okay.
It's how I pay for my citizenship. Right?
Dr. Chachi says, I'm sorry, but the way of thinking that one will get less if others have equality is juvenile, shows a lack of emotional intelligence, and frankly is rooted in probably in stupidity, I think Dr. Chachi is saying. Regina says, yep, I'm not too thrilled with dopey male privilege. All right. And another question here. Michelle says, has this election caused arguments in your friend groups? Okay.
No, all my friends are on the same page.
Yes, for me.
Okay.
Yes, for me. Yes, for me, because I do have a lot of friends that are realtors. And what I have seen in my circles has really opened my eyes to who is around me. I have really seen some pretty nasty stuff in these realtor groups of people who I used to look up to. And I have a different perspective of them now. And everybody has a right to their opinion, but when your opinion oppresses others, I have a problem with it.
I'm going to close out. I'm going to ask you a final question, but I found something about Frank Luntz. And so I'm going to get down to this article. Let me just show it first. So I'm going to bring this up. Okay, and then I'm going to scroll down to the key reading of it. So the title of the article is, okay, so we have Republican, he was pathetic and he could still win. Republican strategist, surprising insights on 45 versus Harris. Frank Luntz has changed his mind. Has changed during the election cycle when he initially thought Harris was a sure winner. Now he's confused about why 45's extreme rhetoric isn't having the same effect it had before. So I'm gonna.
Oh, I saw him on TV explaining this, and he didn't. He was struggling to explain it.
Okay, but I'm going to get down to the two parts here, and I'm going to read them. Then I'm going to ask you a final question, both of you. Going to read them saying why he feels Harris might not win. When Joe Biden announced he was withdrawing from the presidential race and throwing his support behind Harris, the Democratic Party rapidly consolidated behind the vice president. Her sudden candidacy brought forth a wave of enthusiasm like nothing Luntz had ever seen in his decades of political work. He described her opening weeks at the top of the ticket as, quote, a genuine freight train, unquote. That, quote, took the country by storm, unquote, and was, quote, the best political campaign in modern American history, even better than Barack Obama, quote unquote, over that 45-day period. But Luntz says Harris has been comparatively, quote, abysmal, unquote, over the last month because of her outright refusal to separate herself from Biden and his policy choices. Quote, you've got to give voters a second act. You have to give them a second reason to listen. And in her case, she's not telling them what they want to know or need to know, unquote, he said. Quote, she has a responsibility to answer specific questions about what she would do, and voters are not happy, unquote. He also noted that after nearly a decade running almost continuous campaign for the presidency, voters may have become inured to 45's increasingly extreme rhetoric, but he isn't sure why none of it is breaking through, considering how bizarre the ex-president's remarks have been in recent weeks. Quote, what I don't understand is that he's saying stuff that is absolutely extreme and it's not hurting him at all. He is not just annoying or offensive. Now he's saying stuff that we have to get the constitutionality of it. This is not the same stuff that he said when he was president. This is at a different level, unquote, he said. But then he compares why Harris might win. But Luntz added there's a bright spot for Harris in the public polling data, even though he does not trust polling now in the slightest. And that's the incredible gender gap in the American electorate. He cited the recent survey in which Harris's female support at 57% to 45's 39%, while 45's male support is 56% to Harris's 39%.
Okay.
That gender gap, one said there will be, quote, a lot of couples where one member is sleeping on the couch on the election night, not because they're watching TV, unquote. He says, quote, this is real and this is huge, unquote, because women turn up to vote more than men. The gender gap could prove a decisive advantage for Harris. But Luntz still describes the contest as a, quote, dead heat, unquote, unless the vice president pulls further ahead with women. Luntz also warned that younger voters, traditionally unreliable demographic, could make all the difference if they turn out, because Harris and Democrats have, quote, an absolutely positive advantage among any voter under the age 40 and even more so under the age of 30. But for Harris to really pull ahead, hold on a second, because I'm getting some echoing here. Okay. He says, but for Harris to really pull ahead in the final 14 days, he said she needs to figure out a way to make people see her more than just a continuation of the mainstream Democratic policies that Biden has put into place. Quote, I don't think we fully understand the degree to which so many Americans are really frustrated with how conditions are, and they're willing to vote for a convicted felon because she reminds them too much of the status quo. That's the problem. She had a chance to be different. She was different. She changed everything, but she started to run, and after 45 days, she became the status quo, unquote, he said. Quote, she should be differentiating herself more. Okay, I finished reading.
Okay. All right. Here's my problem with that whole piece is that it's crafted and it's designed to put doubt in people's minds. I'm gonna tell you something about Frank Luntz. Let's be very clear, and I can tell you everything that I heard in that. The first thing I heard was that he doesn't want to be right and he doesn't want to be wrong. So Trump can win, but she could win too. But Trump, we can't forget the fact that he might not be MAGA, he's still Republican. Okay. And that came through very clear. So even though he says he's not MAGA, it also shows that he is, and this is my problem with the media, it shows that he does want Trump to win, because he pointed out every reason why Trump shouldn't win, but then was like, oh, but she should be doing this. Okay, so here's the thing. I get from him that he wants her to be a magical Negro and to, fix everything. And no, she has to fix the voters and make them do this, and she has to do this, she has to do that. But why doesn't Trump have to do this? That's what I'm saying. Why are you saying that she has to do this? Why isn't he saying, no, Trump needs to watch his mouth? Trump needs to do better. Trump needs to stop being a rude jerk. And then I definitely can tell from what he's saying that he only asked white people. Because the thing about the husbands and wives sleeping on different things because a wife is, that's not, but I know as being a black, that's not black people. More black wives and husbands are in sync. Most are in sync politically than they're not. Because here's the thing, as black women, we can't be married to someone whose politics don't protect us, because we oftentimes have to play an equal footing in the role in the household. We also have to work. We also have to do these things, right? We don't get married to not work anymore and then have kids and just be a stay-at-home mom. So I get the feeling that he only asked white people, but I also get the feeling that the people that he's talking to in these quote-unquote focus groups were also only Republicans. And not only that, everything that he listed showed me that, no matter what she did, it would never be enough for him. Because he started with, oh, well, she had this and that, and then she hasn't done this. If she was so great in the beginning, guess what? In the beginning, she didn't distance herself from Joe Biden the way that you're saying that she should be doing now that she's not doing. How she was with Joe Biden was no different at the beginning than it is now. That's the part for me that doesn't. And then what he's saying in coded language, because she's being more forceful, she's being more aggressive in getting the messaging out, she's calling balls and stripes. Joy is still there, but she's being serious. She's being dead serious right now because we're in the final stretch. What he's saying is she's turned from being this happy, joyful, like I said, the magical Negro, and now she's this angry black woman. And that's what I got from that whole article.
I was waiting for you to get there. That's exactly what that is. That whole article is an internal struggle with himself.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that this woman is strong. She's a strong black woman, but they equate that to an angry black woman.
Right.
Listen, I saw something very interesting just yesterday. It was where there was a young white reporter or whoever she was, and she was in a black barbershop. And she was asking the black men about who they support and why. And she worded the question like, can you feel like you can trust a black woman in office as a president? My man stopped cutting the hair of the person in the chair and said, did you ask me that question? Because I'm married.
I got a black wife. I'm married to a
black wife. And then she had to repeat himself again. And he was like, if my wife can run my household the way that it's being run right now, I can trust a black woman to run this country.
Mm-hmm.
So all this illusion, what they're doing is they're causing division. Yes, of course. Is there a percentage of black men that don't support black women? Yes, there is. But you hear about that more than the ones that do support us.
Right.
So I thought that was very, very important for us to hear. And that was a very powerful video that more people need to see.
Yeah, I saw it. And it what you said was right, because as you were speaking, I thought this. That Luntz piece, and when I see him, and I hear this thing, and I saw, like I said, I saw him on MSNBC earlier this week talking about this, and here's what I realized is that with Luntz, what you're seeing is the disintegration of a mediocre white man. And there is this Black woman who's going to get to this position of power that has only been held by only one other Black person, and the rest for 200 plus years have been white men. Right?
Oh, and don't forget that she's getting also the backlash of how they still pissed off about Obama.
Right. But not only that, but she has, and it's not even just her. She has gotten the ears of the population of women that they believe that they control more than any other population, and that's white women. White women are, and that's why it goes back to the whole thing about the conversation before about the oh well, it's just the focus on abortion, whatever. That's why they're mad about that, because this thing that, and it's something that it's, look, this is your fault, right? This is your fault. You're just mad now that because of something stupid that you did, you can't control white women anymore.
All right, let me catch up on some comments. Regina says, my group dropped one friend who posted a pic of herself with a 45 t-shirt of him right after the assassination attempt. April says, DL Hughley did a Black Man Roundtable this week.
I saw that.
YouTube. That was interesting. I'll leave it at that. Michelle said, it's interesting that women turn out to vote. The women turn out versus men, I guess, maybe because the imbalance of power of genders. Michelle also says, in just over 100 days, VP Harris has run a great campaign from Cardi B to Meg Thee Stallion, the Obama's famous white men. She's done the most yet. They want her to do more. The burden of Black women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And remember, Cardi B was not supporting her before.
Okay. Regina says, it is interesting how women more probably vote more. We have outvoted men by nearly 10% every election since 1980. Hopefully even more this year. Dr. Tati says, yes, the article points definitely to his internal struggle. That's, she says, a him problem.
Mm-hmm.
And Michelle says the social engineering has been real, especially via Black heritable relationships on Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter. She also says, Michelle says, young, fertile white women are voting for Harris.
Yep.
And then we have a final question for the audience and one for me. Let me see if I see. No, I don't think so. I think we're covered. Yeah, we're covered. So as we close down, it is Saturday before the Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
Who will win the Electoral College?
Harris.
Okay, I won't put my opinion in.
Well, here's the thing. You know what? Because I thought about what you have been saying. I can say this. I know where the red parts of Connecticut are. I don't see the Trump signs the way I used to. Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. There's this store. It's a gun shop, right? They used to be covered in Trump posters and flags and everything, right? I drove past them the other day. Nothing. That's it. Nothing. I think the enthusiasm for Trump is not there, because the truth of the matter is there are Republicans who are getting tired of him too. And again, it goes back to the numbers. It's a numbers game. He did not grow. He did not gain any voters. All he has are the ones that he had going into this. He didn't gain any voters, and he didn't do any outreach.
What about young men?
Huh? What?
What about young men?
He already had them.
Okay.
He already had, and let's be very clear, young white men, because guess what? Young Black men, 85% to Harris. Young Latino men, 68% to Harris. And so it's young white men, but guess what? He already had them, because if we knew that she's got young Black and Latino men that way, then we know what he already had with young white men. Okay. And I don't think, and again, young white men, but young people historically are undervote. They don't come out to vote like that. So the thought that that would even make a difference. No, his he has not grown. He has not gained any people, because guess what? If he had, don't you think that the news media would have like jumped on that like a succubus? Because they love these. Remember how they did the thing with when Joe Biden's thing? Because remember, Donald Trump is good for media business. A Donald Trump presidency is good for media business. All of these people who are heads of these networks are Trump supporters. Trust me.
Okay.
If they got the indication that he had grown his base, it would have been all over the press, the same way that it was to get Biden to step down and been like, oh, Trump has grown his base, blah, 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 grown his base. But you know, the other thing that also pissed a lot of people off, Dr. Vibe, was the Washington Post refusing to publish. They already decided to endorse Harris. They refused. Jeff Bezos decided, yeah, we're not going to publish that. We're just going to not endorse this time. And why? Because people saw for the fact that it was because she's a Black woman. Because guess what? They endorsed Hillary Clinton. They endorsed Barack Obama. They endorsed the Black man. They endorsed the white woman. They could not endorse the Black woman of Southeast Asian descent that has a Jewish husband. That was just too far for Jeff Bezos. But also because Jeff Bezos is a coward, and he's afraid that Trump is going to come after the Washington Post if he wins. But guess what the people did? 200,000 people cut off their subscription this week. I'm sorry, the next day, actually. 200,000. And that was as of
King was very, very, very vocal about that on Twitter. He was like, I never thought that I would do this, but I'm doing it.
Yep, they did it. A lot of people did this. Not only that, but then they had reporters, editors quit.
Okay.
So
all right.
I really do think, I think that this is gonna, and honestly, I looked at the predictions. I've seen the predictions. More than one pollster has predicted Harris will get 303 to Trump getting 238. And last time Biden got 305 to Trump 228. So I honestly think that the first person, it's the first person to get to 270 that wins.
Yeah. Okay. We got to cut this because we got to get rest for Tuesday. I'm gonna really quick get through the last comments. Regina says, what do we think about the LeBlanc video? I just heard about it. I know he's supporting.
It was good. It was very good. Very well done.
Because of time, we're gonna keep it short. We're gonna wrap it through the comments. Dr. Chachi says this was great. Thank you. Regina says, if you are live with us right now, there's a Luther Vandross documentary on CNN. Regina says Harris will win in 45 and his cult will cause a lot of trouble. Dr. Chachi says, Regina, yes. We've got Dr. Chachi says, sane people see that this is a cult. People interested in the Constitution and democracy won't stand for a cult running this country. She also says that Jeff Bezos is Cuban. And Regina says it actually ended up to being 250,000 people that cut their subscription from the Washington Post. And Michelle, so true. Good night. All right, let's end it off here because these ladies need strength for Tuesday because I have a feeling it's going to be a long one on today. So, as always, we'd like to have them share their contact information. First off, the LaLa girl, lady.
It's me. Nobody asked me how real estate is doing during this election cycle, so I just put in a link to let you know that. Because it is very interesting. It is a tie to real estate in this, but you can find me at bit.ly/Laura Key Info. I made it very easy. I have a lot of great stuff there. And I'm asking you that you're watching us on YouTube, most of you, but I am also looking for your subscriptions over there on my YouTube as well. So I look forward to seeing you over there.
100%. Aisha K.
You can find me at Aisha Staggers on Twitter and on Instagram. It's AK Staggers.
Wonderful. That is it. So me. I just put Aisha back up. No, there we go. All right. So let's finish it off right quick. if you want to get in touch with me, okay, let's do it this way because there's too many things going on and this has gone long and we need to get rest. All right. If you want to get a hold of me, website, the drvibeshow.com, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, the dr period VIBESHOW, Instagram at the drvibeshow.com, X at drvibeshow, email address dr period VIBE at the drvibeshow.com. Also, remember, coming up this Tuesday, live, 9 p.m., 6 p.m. Pacific, U.S. presidential election live watch party. Wherever you're watching this, that's where you need to be. All right, I'm going to end up. There's other stuff I've already put in the comments section wherever you're watching, how you can get a hold of the Primetime Saturday store, the Discord group for Primetime Saturday with Aisha LaLa, and also Girlfriends Chat. It's all in your comments section. And finally, and also how you can get in contact with me. I believe I put it in there. If not, I'm going to put it right there right now. But I'm going to end off with this. Well, first of all, thank you to everyone who watched live on the replay. Hope we see you on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday. And then we're going to finish off with this. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. And as always, just don't manage your time, manage your energy, and remember to give yourselves grace. We will see you on Tuesday. And if not, we're going to miss you, but you're going to miss us too, because we're going to rock on Tuesday. God bless. Peace, well. Keep the faith. Walk good.